Hello, Divine Ones. This is Ashley for FD 1111 Ministries, home of Tarot, Bible, and Alchemy. This is lesson 2, and we first started off with the Fool card, and you can check that video out in this playlist. So I'm going from the Fool card to the World card because this is the completion of the Fool. I'm going to take this card over here, and I'm going to show you a couple different examples of the different Fool cards, the World cards that we have. I'm going to be using the Rider-Waite tarot deck for this decoding, but I just wanted to show you the different cards that we have here. This is from the Hermetic tarot deck, and I have the different ones. So let's get down to decoding this card. This is probably maybe the most creepiest or weirdest cards in the tarot deck, possibly, besides just the Wheel of Fortune. So I'm going to break down this card. First of all, we have the wreath here, which is like some type of completion. So in the Hermetic tarot deck, or in the Thoth tarot deck, that they consider this to be the Arubis, which is the snake eating its own tail. And when the snake is eating its own tail, this represents affinity. So we're talking about the continual of some type of rebirth, or a continual of, or a completion of a project, or continual, like death, burial, resurrection, death, burial, resurrection. And it's just a continual of that cycle. It's also talking about the revolution to evolution, how humanity, the consciousness, continues to spiral up. Continuing on here with this figure in the middle, it seems like it's a woman, but it's actually a woman and a male. So this represents the
hermaphroditic
energy that is played out in humanity as well as nature itself, the dualistic energies. You have the two batons, and so batons are synonymous with scepters, are synonymous with wands and rods, etc. But with these two batons, we're talking about balance, but we're also talking about the race of life, and how we have the masculine, the feminine, the left brain, right brain, and dualism all together. In Kabbalah, the World card represents Malkuth, which is the 10th Sethra. Like I mentioned with the Fool card, that this card is number 21, and 21, 2 plus 1 equals 3, the Trinity. We're talking about the different Trinities that I mentioned before, about the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, death, burial, resurrection, as well as Mercury, salt, and sulfur. So you're talking about the completion of the great work, and then you embark on a higher great work. This would represent as well the Philosopher's Stone in the completion of the Fool card, of the beginning. This lovely lady represents the 5th element, which is ether. The 4 cardinal virtues were represented by the 4 beasts here, which I'm going to get to in a moment. But this card altogether represents, in Kabbalah, Malkuth, which is the kingdom, which is the earth. And it is the 10th Sethra and the 4th emanation. So the 4th emanation means like the 4th realm, if you will, which is the physicality, which is the earth. In older decks, the woman depicted as Christ or even Hermes, which are both messengers of God. Like how I mentioned before about the 4 beasts and the 4 virtues, the first one would be prudence, which is wisdom, and wisdom is, in Greek, would be Sophia, and Sophia is one of the other virtues that we will get to in like a whole nother study. But prudence, wisdom, Sophia, and then we have the second one is courage, the third one is temperance, which is balancing, and the 4th one is justice. So all of those cards are also listed if you wanted to know what those cards would be in the tarot deck. Besides just wisdom, you have courage, which would be the strength card, temperance, which would be the temperance card, and then you have the justice card as well. So who did these 4 characters represent? Yes, they are animals, but these animals have different meanings as far as the apostles of Christ, as well as other virtues. So the first one over here, the winged eagle, represents John. Then we have the winged lion, which represents Mark, And then we have the winged bull, ox, or calf, which represents Luke. And then we have the winged man, or the angel, which represents Matthew. And we're going to decode each one of these. And so altogether, this card represents from the book of Ezekiel, the vision of Ezekiel, and the cherubim. From both the book of Revelations 4:7, the throne of God, as well as the book of Ezekiel, Yahweh's chariot or cherubim, the Merkabah, and the wheel of eyes. John is called the disciple that Christ loved for many reasons, not just because of his unwavering faith and the ability to stare adversity into the face and ascend over adversity. It is because he had this divine spark within him. Him and his brother were called the sons of thunder because initially, before the transformation of John, he had somewhat of a quick temper. Through his transformation, that he transformed into more of an individual that had a higher perspective.
The correlation between John and the eagle is solidified by the presence of John on the Mount of Transfiguration. This is where the Christ is transfigured before John, James, and Peter. This is another reason why John is associated with the eagle. The eagle has the ability to stare into the sun, as John had the ability to gaze upon the glory of the Christ in his full transfigured self.
John, in his opening of John, is that he goes over in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning the Word was God and was with God, that he goes into the very beginning. So he had it altogether different outlook over the ministry of Christ, over the whole movement of Christ. He went to the very, very beginning of all creation. He was one of the disciples that were there when the Christ was crucified, and he took Mother Mary in to his home and took care of her. And that is symbolic of another message that is in the advanced study. So therefore, he represents the divinity of Christ. The winged lion, Leo, the constellation or the representation or the zodiac of Leo, which is the lion, fire energy. And this is represented by Mark. The lion represents courage and the path to salvation, and the courage to traverse through adverse times to obtain some type of authority. Alchemically, the lion represents sulfur, the soul.
Not to be confused with the lion eating the sun in alchemy. The representation of the lion is associated with the Lion of Judah, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. This is also the tribe the bloodline of the Christ arose from. Matthew was a tax collector. This represents man's reasoning to salvation and paying the debt. Society has to pay the debt to tax collectors, and this is the same paying the debt of the taxes and the Christ coming to pay the debt of the world.
The winged man, or either the angel, and this represents Aquarius, but I also have stated that this one represents Aries, and I'm gonna get into that. So traditionally it represents Aquarius, which is the man, and in the genealogy, when Matthew first opens up, which is the first book of the Gospels, he went over the genealogy of Christ from Abraham, and Abraham is considered to be the incarnate Christ and humanity of Christ, the human aspects of Christ. Aquarius is an air sign. So you have the 4 different elements here, the 4 seasons, and the 4 apostles. But going back to Aries, and so the reason why I mentioned Aries, because Aries actually is the beginning of spring. But Aries also represents the primordial man, which is Adam, and primordial, more so like Adam, Kadmon, and that is the supreme Adam, which is the first man, like the spark. So although Aries is a fire sign, we're talking about the primordial spark, like the spark of the soul. That's the reason why I interchange this one with Aries as well as Aquarius. So that Aries aspect will go with the Fool card and the spring equinox. We have the winged bull, ox, or calf. It's an earth energy, and it represents Taurus. Luke represents sacrifice, service, strength, and all of the duties. Gospel according to Luke. He opens up with the duties of Zechariah. And Zechariah was a high priest. He represents aspects of Christ that sacrifice, like the high priest. They also call the Christ the high priest as well. And with the bull, the ox, and the calf, all of those were animals that were sacrificed. If you study the scriptures, that Christ came to be a sacrifice. Luke was a physician, so the healing, it also represents the healing aspects of Christ. Altogether, these four represent the nature of beasts. So you have man as a beast, eagle, the birds, lion, the more aggressor, and then you have the ox, which would be like the laborer. In the advanced study, I will get into the different attributes of the Christos energy. So the Christos would be the center, like how I was explaining in different cards, how it's depicted as Christ in the center. And then you have the 12 disciples, the 12 tribes of Israel, which would be the 144. But you also break this down into the 4 different categories, or up to 3 different categories, which are the 12 faculties of the conscious mind, well, of the mind of a person, of an individual. But that will be for an advanced study to better understand how to not just decode this card and what's being said, but as well how to use this when you're dealing with different types of clients, when you're dealing with different type of world events. So until next time, you guys, I will check you later. This is Ashley. Make sure you check out the description box for personal services, for the spiritual business startup course, the Patreon family. You can join that, free monthly readings. All right, talk to you later. Peace.